off with a new shock tower. This new tower has the half-hole adjustments just like the front tower, but it also has the option to run either the older 2.0 length short shocks in the rear, the 122 millimeter spec shocks, or the long shocks, which are now included in the kit at the 137 millimeter shocks. So this gives you the option to run either height. We prefer running the long shocks now, but you have both options now without changing a shock tower. The other things, well, the benefit of this tower is you have more camber link adjustment farther in. Before you only had these two outer rows, and now we have an additional inner row to run a longer rear camber link. And finally, we also have a wing height adjustment now. So the lowest set of holes is the current height, which mounts straight into the bulkhead. But now we have a +7 and a +12 millimeter option. So this can give you kind of a fine-tuned height of your wing depending on what wing you use or how you like the car to drive. Our kit setting is the middle height, the +7. We use this pretty much all the time, any conditions. We also have a tall wing mount in the kit. So this has been an option since right after the 2.0 release, but we've used it forever. We really like it. It's 10 millimeters higher and 10 millimeters farther forward than the kit 2.0 wing mount. And this comes standard in the kit as well. The other new part is a new rear gearbox. Similar to the front, this was introduced for the Eb48 2.0. The main feature for this is it now uses the same size bearing on the inner and the outer. It got rid of the smaller bearing. So there's increased durability, your bearings last longer, and there's just more support there. So it's a lot stronger, especially with all of the ribbing going around the bearing. The final small part is a new body mount. It no longer hooks over the shock tower. Now it just screws up against it. And this was done to give room for the wing adjustment. And so we just changed the body mount a little bit, and it's more solid now as it has 2 screw holes. Oh, one more thing. We do have a new shock standoff. Well, not new. It's the same as the front now. So we got rid of the +4 shock standoff, as with the long shocks especially, we just feel the shorter standoff in the rear. It makes the rear end squat more predictably and have more consistent grip. We have a new rear suspension arm that is now 5 millimeters longer at the hub. It's thicker, a little bit more durable, and also includes a bushing now out here to snap in and make the outer hinge pin just as free as our inner is on the bushing, similar to the 2.0. So the benefits of this 5 mil longer arm are pretty huge. They make the car a lot more stable and just a little bit calmer and easier to drive. So this arm paired with the new hub, you can't use it with the old 2.0 hub, as the hub and arm have changed. But this is a pretty major part of our rear end upgrades for the 2.1. The next bit are new C&D blocks. So now from the 2.0, these C&D blocks are lowered 1 millimeter each, allowing for a different rear roll center that creates a little bit more rear grip and keeps the car down in the track. So these C&D blocks now key in slightly differently to the chassis and use a new chassis that has machine cutouts for the arm to fit into. So we had a new chassis and C&D blocks for the new rear roll center geometry. The nice thing about these are the C block screws in on each side to the chassis and is a lot more rigid than the old setup. So there's little less flex and just more rigidity and consistency. So these C&D blocks are a nice addition to the rear end of the 2.1. Besides that, we have all the same hardware, except we did change slightly the sway bar bearing. It used to be a metal shielded bearing, and now it's a rubber shielded bearing. as this bearing doesn't see a lot of speed. It's mainly, it's used for a sway bar. So keeping the dirt out is a priority, and we changed this just to add a little bit of durability. The rear sway bar is the same as the 2.0, as we found it works pretty much everywhere. 2.5 millimeter bar. We do have optional sway bars all the way from 2.0 millimeters to 3 millimeters and everything in between. But the 2.5 we use in 90% of conditions, and it is the kit sway bar. So one of the first things, it's still the same part number, but there was a running change made to the front arm for more steering rack clearance. So there's no need to Dremel when you run the Ackerman plate forward, as well as some more tire clearance here for the changed Ackerman positions. So now the arm is turnkey in any setting that you want to use it, Ackerman plate in either direction. So that's a running change made to this arm. Any spare arms also for the 2.0 will have this change done as well to them, but it comes included in the 2.1 kit. The other changes are new lowered A and B blocks, each by 1 millimeter, as indicated by one dot on both blocks. This new arm height allows for a slightly different front roll center, and the chassis has been updated to accommodate. If you would like to run the higher arm like the 2.0, you can also run the 2.0 blocks, and anything can be swapped in any combination with the 1 dot or the standard 0 dot blocks. But we found this setup to work really well with the kit setting of 1 dot up on the A and dot center on the B. And it gives us the best overall balance we found, including these new parts in the kit. The other thing is it comes with a 2.3 millimeter sway bar, same as the 2.0. This setting seems to work really well at all the tracks we go to, including our currently existing universal is also included in the front end of the car. This was an option part on the 2.0, but it's something we really liked to use in pretty much all track conditions. So we included it with the 2.1 as well. That way it's ready to go out of the kit. As well as a new front end geometry. So we have new spindles and caster blocks that, working together, give us a lot different of a front end feel, a lot more stable, more controllable, better bump handling, and just overall a much more consistent working front end. By doing that, we have a much longer camber link that makes the front of the car more stable and have all those benefits as listed earlier. And to go along with that, we have a new spindle design. This spindle is similar to the optional spindle for the 2.0. Geometry-wise, it's the same, but we have a new kingpin mounting system, as there was some issues with screws stripping out or breaking on occasion after a lot of hard running. So we changed that design to a pin and bushing system to completely eliminate any points of failure. So with that, we have new bushings and pins. So there's 2 different colors. There's the black pin and bushing, and then there's the silver pin and bushing. The difference between them are the bushings for the silver and the pin for the silver is shorter than the black one. And this gives us a 1 millimeter optional axle height, so you can raise it or run it in the low position. So we prefer to build with the standard low position for most conditions, but it's nice to have that optional 1 millimeter of adjustment now to raise the axle. Moving forward, we also have new steering plates. These were options on the 2.0 if you use the optional plated spindles. So now that the kit has the spindle plate option, we've included the B plate. It's kind of the mid-range plate. We have an A that's a little bit calmer and a C that's a little bit more aggressive. So we went with the mid-range option as it seems to be suitable for most drivers. So that's included in the kit as well. And then we also have new hexes, like the rear is the +1 option, indicated by the 1 dot on the hex. And finally, we have new rod ends to have wheel clearance. They are angled and bent right here. These go on the caster block side of the camber link. Make sure you use these with the new caster blocks and spindles to get proper clearance, and they have to be on that outside. And it is a new chassis plate. The center layout is still the same as the 2.0. It works really well, so we didn't really see any need to move anything around. We did have the addition of 2 new mounting positions for the battery braces, and that's going to give you an option to run the brick size 4S battery. So we changed that a little bit for the mounting here. It just gives you an extra option, but the standard 4S configuration is still what we recommend and use. Besides that, the biggest change is the rear of the chassis for the new low roll center C&D blocks. The chassis is clearanced for the arm being lower, as well as has screw holes for the C block to screw to the chassis for extra durability, and has a different key-in method for the D block as well for those new parts. As well as the front end has slightly more clearance for the new lower A and B blocks. But otherwise, we still have the same 4mm thickness and the same layout, just the slight accommodations for the other new parts in the kit. We have, just like the front, a new piston, a tapered 3 different size hole split piston. This one is the same as the front, except the middle hole size is a 1.2 instead of a 1.3, and it is indicated by 2 dimples right next to the center hole. So those 2 dimples are for your rear shocks. Besides the piston, we also have a new rear spring, which just released as an option for the 2.0 and now comes standard on the 2.1, is the 83mm long rear springs. The yellow rate is what we use for the kit, and between yellow and orange is pretty much all we ever use, so the yellow is really good baseline for all conditions. The other new thing we have are, just like the front shocks, we now have bladders instead of emulsion, but we also do have the emulsion option, so you can build your shocks either way.